Yes, 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 yes. There is a healing going on in this beautiful place. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. How we being, how we doing? So good to see all of you. So good to be here with all of you. I'm going to jump right in because we have some powerful things to cover, and I believe that somebody's life will change as a result of this message today. So as you already know, we are in our message series, Stay Woke, the Path of Self-Realization. In week one, we started with Always Innocent, as we're looking at the life of the great teacher and guru, Yogananda. Started with looking at his early life when he was about 7 or 8 years old and seeing how his faith, even as a child, he was able to do some pretty amazing things. And in that message, I talked about the idea that we look at that and we look at what children do in the most beautiful ways. We call that childlike faith. And the truth is that that innocence of a child still remains with all of us. But we lost that, right? We forget that, and so we think we don't have that same capability and power. But I reminded you in that message that you are always innocent. In week two, so we prayed, now what? Of course, this was after the horrific shooting in Las Vegas, and of course, there's just so many things that have been happening in this country and on our planet, and thoughts and prayers feel really empty right now when people say that. And of course, it is empty if you do not know what true prayer is. But even going beyond that, once we understand that we prayed, what is it that we're supposed to do? How do we stand in the world as those who hold the truth and as metaphysicians, recognizing that we have the power, capability, and possibility to actually shift and change our life experience? I invite you to go back to that message. And then last week, training your inner guru. Looking at the life of Yogananda, we looked at this idea that there was this profound process that he went through. First, a process to finding his teacher, finding his guru. And once he found his teacher, it was actually 10 years before he began what was considered his actual mission in life, what had been prophesied about him at his birth. And so we looked at that to understand that there's a process for all of us, that we must find our guru and then train our guru. And many times it doesn't look like what we think it would look like. I talked about in, of course, the movie Karate Kid, right? What Mr. Miyagi had Daniel do didn't feel like that had anything to do with his purpose and destiny, right? Wax on, wax off, washing cars and painting the fence. Didn't seem like anything related to his goal, but actually his guru was teaching him the entire time. And so we can take those examples and realize that our lives are showing us the same thing. So as I was preparing for this message, my grandfather came to mind, my maternal grandfather. He's going to be 94 next month. And I'm so grateful for him. But there's so many interesting things about him. And one of the things that's interesting, he's a pretty petite man. He's actually shorter than me and has always been very thin. Well, thin. I don't say very thin, but he's always been thin. And the thing that's interesting about him, though, he can eat you out of house and home. That man loves to eat. Now, my grandmother was an amazing, amazing cook. And, he would always... He could eat up everything. It didn't matter what was left over. He could always refill his plate. And even to this day, he's the same way. He lives in an assisted living facility, and my mother prepares meals for him weekly so that he can still get some of that good home cooking, right? And not the stuff that they're serving him, the bland stuff there. And still, at 94 years old, he can throw down. And so over the years, people have asked, and I said, Dr. Durham, what do you do? Because we see how you eat, but we've never seen you gain a bunch of weight. And he said, think thin. That's what I do. Think thin. And that's pretty profound, right? Think thin, right? Now, I know for anyone that's hearing this message or in the room, they might be kind of annoyed to hear that, right? It's like, but that was his life philosophy, and that's what he believed, and so that's what he created in his life. And I thought about that story because Yogananda tells in Autobiography of a Yogi 2 think thin stories. And so I want to share these stories with you because I think that there's a powerful truth hidden in here. And we're going to kind of unpack it a little bit as we talk about reversing the thought so that we can reverse the condition. So Yogananda tells this story about his early time with his guru in the ashram. And his guru says to him, and just to go back, we've talked about this before, but Yogananda, before he was named Yogananda, his parents named him Mukunda. So at this point, he's still Mukunda. And so his guru says to him, "You're too thin, Mukunda." And so he got immediately really self-conscious about that because as a child, he had a condition that he essentially was losing a lot of weight. And so there were a lot of medicines and tonics that he tried, but nothing worked. And so he was basically a sickly child. And so he was very self-conscious about this because he knew how thin he was because of this illness. And so to hear his guru say that, he just kind of felt a certain way about it. And he went on to explain that to his guru. And his guru says this: medicines have limitations. The divine creative life force has none. Believe that you shall be well and strong. Now, at that time, in response to that, Yogananda says, no other healer, and I had tried many, had been able to arouse in me such profound faith. Day by day, I waxed in health and strength. Through Sri Yukteswar's hidden blessing, in 2 weeks, I gained the weight that I had vainly sought in the past, and my stomach ailments vanished permanently. So he had tried to gain weight, but couldn't. But at the command of his guru, saying, believe that you shall be well and strong, it was done. In 2 weeks, he gained the weight that he could never gain as a child all throughout his life. Gained the weight that all of these medicines and ointments and things were supposed to help him do. Didn't work, right? Now, when I read that statement, believe that you shall be well and strong, it reminds me of Jesus. Because Jesus would say the same thing. There's a story of the two blind men that came to him and wanted to see. And Jesus asked the question, do you believe that you will be made well or made whole? They said yes. And he says, by your faith, you'll be made whole. Believe that you shall be well and strong. And so this is what gets us into the title. Reverse the thought, reverse the condition. Now, as he tells this story of his relationship with his guru and how he had this story about weight, then his guru, Sri Yukteswar, tells the story about his guru. Very similar story, but even more powerful. So Sri Yukteswar comes to him because he had been very sick. He comes to his guru, whose name is Lahiri Mahashaya. Sri Yukteswar had been very sick, and so he comes to his guru and he says, sir, I have been very sick and have lost many pounds. His guru's response, I see, you made yourself unwell, and now you think you are thin. Now, of course, when he heard those words, he was kind of dumbfounded. Like, I didn't say I think I'm thin. I'm sick. I've been sick, and I lost a lot of weight. But at the moment, he says, my receptive mind accepted his words as a hint that he was secretly healing me. The next morning, I sought him out and exclaimed exultingly, sir, I feel much better today. Indeed, today you invigorate yourself. No, master, I protested. It is you who have helped me. This is the first time in weeks that I have had any energy. And his guru responds, oh, yes, your malady has been quite serious. Your body is frail. Yet who can say how it will be tomorrow? The thought of a possible return of my weakness brought me a shudder of cold fear. The following morning, I could hardly drag myself to Lahiri Mahashaya's home. Sir, I am ailing again. My guru's glance was quizzical. So, once more, you indispose yourself. My patience was exhausted. Guru Deva, I said, I realize now that day by day you have been ridiculing me. I don't understand why you disbelieve my truthful reports. Now, do we understand what's happening here? Are we following what's going on? This is very, very powerful. He comes to his guru, Sri Yukteswar, and says, I'm not feeling well. I've been sick. What does his guru say? I see. You made yourself unwell, and now you think you are thin. But understanding the words, he then goes on and takes the healing ideas from his guru, and the next day he feels better. And his guru responds, indeed, today you invigorate yourself. Now, of course, he's thinking that his guru was the one that healed him. And so because he thinks that, the guru goes on and says, yes, you're right. Your malady has been quite serious. Your body is frail yet. Who can say how it will be tomorrow? What I love about this, what's interesting is that he says, and at this point, that thought of a possible return of my weakness brought me a shudder of cold fear. Every thought has to be mixed with emotion in order to manifest. And so that thought brought him a shudder of fear, and what happens? The following morning, I could hardly drag myself to Lahiri Mahashaya's home. Sir, I am ailing again. And then his guru says to him, so once more you indispose yourself. He's pointing him back to his power. You see that he was reversing his thought back and forth and reversing his condition. Yes, yes? And so then finally his guru says these powerful words. It has been your thoughts that have made you feel alternately weak and strong. My guru looked at me affectionately. You have seen how your health has exactly followed your subconscious expectations. Thought is a force, even as electricity or gravitation. The human mind is a spark of the almighty consciousness of God. I could show you that whatever your powerful mind believes very intensely would instantly come to pass. And he goes on in the story and he says, from that moment, he then realized this truth and actually gained 50 pounds in one day. And he never had any issues with feeling too thin or thinking thin again because he understood the power of his thought. Reverse the thought, reverse the condition. Now, I'm going to digress here, and I want you to hold on because it might seem like I'm not talking about the same thing, but if you catch this, oh my God, this will change your life. Now, many of you know I use video games as an analogy about how we interact with life, and I use that analogy because it's powerful. One, it's a modern analogy, this understanding that we're the ones that are playing the game. And so the character on the screen, we recognize that character can fall in the ditch, and we're okay with that because we know we can reset, right, and start all over again. We get unlimited lives. We know that, right? And we know that the character on the screen responds to what we're doing, what we're inputting. That's what it does. And so we have this powerful opportunity to manipulate our lives in the same way that we manipulate what we're seeing on the screen, right? That's a beautiful idea. Yes, yes? And an empowering idea. But I want to take us a step further. There's a beautiful text called The Field Paradigm by Joachim Claes. And he takes this video game analogy a little further, and it just really, really just inspired me in so many ways. So first, what we have to understand is how video games actually work, what we're seeing on the screen. And so what he writes here is what happens on the level of the computer to create the illusion of reality that are video games. The computer calculates a new screen about 60 times per second based on 3 factors. 1, memory of the previous screen. 2, the programmed laws of physics. And 3, input from the player. Right? So that's the first thing that we just talked about, input from the player. But we got to understand the first part. So first he says that the computer calculates a new screen about 60 times per second. We don't realize this, right? But when we look at a screen, every second you're seeing 60 images. And that's what appears to be the movement that we're seeing on the screen. Now, what's interesting about that, this is why he also says that memory of the previous screen is required. Because from the image 1 to image 30, there's really not much of a difference between the 2 screens. And so there's a memory of frame 1 and frame 2 to 3, and there's just slight variations in each frame. Now, this is actually how life works. This is why life actually looks the same when we wake up in the morning. Oh, things are familiar, right? Because we're taking memory from what we've already experienced, and now we're projecting that onto the screen of life. 60 frames per second, okay? But then what's also important is the programmed laws of physics. Now, what's beautiful about video games is in a video game, it can create whatever laws of physics it wants, right? Some characters, I'm thinking about a Mario game that, you jump once and it's a short jump, and you jump twice and then it's a higher jump, things that we couldn't do as human beings, right? Or if it's a game where you're flying, you have some kind of hovering car, right? It would have to obey or create in that world different laws of physics because it's something that we don't do right now. Yes, yes? Okay. And then finally, there's input from the player. And so when we recognize then this analogy that we have memory of the previous screen, program laws of physics, and input from the player, let's take this to what happens in our lives. Because our lives are just like this video game, 60 frames per second, program laws of physics, and we provide input. The input is our thought. The input is what we believe. And we may have something in our life that we want to change, a condition that we want to reverse. But in order to do that, we have to reverse the thought. But it's not just about our input, because I think for many of us, that's what we've been doing. We've been pressing the buttons and moving things, and it's like, but it's still not doing what I want it to do. It's still not doing what I want it to do. Why? Because we don't realize that we have the power to reprogram the laws of physics within the game. In truth, we don't even understand the laws of physics that are already programmed in the game. Because what we're doing is we're looking outside of ourselves and saying, well, the game won't allow me to do this. The game won't allow me to be wealthy. The game won't allow me to be healed. The game won't allow me to be happy. The game won't allow me to be whole. But if you understand that it's a game, you have this possibility, and Pastor Yolanda knows this because we've been talking a lot about it. But what's been coming to me lately and what I've been focusing on, my prayer right now in 4Ts, is the divine programmer within and all around me prospers me now. And this idea of the divine programmer, this is what this is all about. Because what I began to understand is that actually we have this profound opportunity to program the game. We've been living life as though what we see on the screen, the memory of the previous screen, and the program laws of physics are fixed. But the truth is it's not. The truth is we have the ability and possibility within this game to do so many things. Now let's go back to the video game. It's interesting. Because if you look at what happens in a video game, the designers of the game only create the laws of that universe. They can't tell you what all of the things that your character can or cannot do. What we get to do as those that play the game, and what's interesting, if you look at those that design games, they're in awe of people who play the game. Because people that play the game do things that they didn't even know was possible. They just created this universe, this sphere with certain rules that you can break them or apply them, but do things that, again, the game maker or programmer itself did not actually program those moves. That's not what's happening. The moves that you make, going left, going right, going up, going down, going into this room, going into that room, they don't program your movements. But the game has all of the possibilities for you to do anything. Are you hearing me? So here within this universe, if you follow this analogy, here within this universe, you have the opportunity to, one, remember, okay, well, I'm creating from memory. But I'm creating from memory at 60 frames per second. So at any second, I can change one of those individual frames and everything changes. Now, if I just move this from here to here, I've literally changed the universe. I've literally changed the universe. But again, in the video game, we think that that's how we change our lives. Oh, okay, I've changed the universe, but my life hasn't changed. Because we got to go to the level of thought. We have to go to the level of code. We have to go within. See, the truth is you're connected to the code. Oh my God. You're connected to this divine programmer where the ones and zeros are. In programming language, ones and zeros are just yes and no's. Yes and no, yes and no, yes and no. And that's how any programming language, that's how any computer program or video game is actually created. It's a bunch of yeses and no's. And so at the level of consciousness, that's where every yes and no folds back into the one. And then there's a yes, or there's a no. And there's a yes, and there's a no. And then it starts to manifest as our reality. We got to go back to the code, back where everything is one, and then we say yes or we say no to what it is that we want. Reverse the thoughts, then you reverse the condition. So I encourage you, if there's something that you want to reverse in your life, first you got to go to that place. Go to the code. Go to where everything is one, where every possibility exists. Again, within the game, every possibility exists. But as the player, it's up to us to say yes or no. It's up to us to input, not on this external level, but on the internal level, at the level of code. Now, how does Sri Yukteswar say this? And how does Yogananda say this? Same thing. My guru, awake in God, knew this world to be nothing but an objectivized dream of the Creator. Because he was completely aware of his unity with the divine dreamer, he was able to manipulate life. He says because he was aware of this, his guru could materialize and dematerialize at will. Because he understood that this is an objectified dream. A video game. They didn't have video games back in the 1920s. He couldn't use that analogy. So he called it a dream. And then his guru goes on. All creation is governed by law. The principles that operate in the outer universe, discoverable by scientists, are called natural laws. But there are subtler laws that rule the hidden spiritual planes and the inner realm of consciousness. These principles are knowable through the science of yoga. It is not the physicist, but the self-realized master who comprehends the true nature of matter. Matter. Everything that we think is solid, one, is not solid. It's vibrating. It's always moving. That which we call that is solid is always changing. This is the effect world. This out here is the effect world. It's awesome. It's wonderful. I love the effect world, right? We don't teach that the external world is bad or you got to shun the world or move away from the world and go on a mountain. No. Life was created for us to thrive and enjoy and to be able to manipulate and create in. But you got to know that this is a world you can manipulate. Just like a video game world is a world that you can manipulate, that you can do a bunch of things and change things based on what you do, breaking the laws or following the laws. It is not the physicist, but the self-realized master who comprehends the true nature of matter. So how do we reverse conditions? Well, first, again, I think we have to come to this profound awareness of the power that we have. Because for so many of us, we can hear Louise Hay tell us that we can change our life. We can hear Wayne Dyer. You can hear Pastor Greg. You can hear Pastor Yolanda. But if you don't believe that you have power, you can affirm till you turn blue in the face. It ain't going to mean a thing. So there's this knowingness that must possess you. There's this knowingness that you must walk through this earth with just like you know your name. There's this knowingness that you must walk through, this confidence that you must have, the same confidence that you have when you breathe in the breath of life, that confidence. That same confidence that causes you not to worry if your heart is going to beat, that confidence, that knowingness. And then you can reverse any thought like my grandfather, think thin. You can reverse any thought like Yogananda. You can reverse any thought like his guru, Sri Yukteswar. Now, in closing, I want to share this idea from Abraham Hicks. This is in Asking and Is Given, chapter 19, saying the same thing in a different way. You have creative control of your experience. There is no condition so severe that you cannot reverse it by choosing different thoughts. However, choosing different thoughts requires focus and practice. If you continue to focus as you have been, to think as you have been, and to believe as you have been, then nothing in your experience will change. The only thing that's required is focus and practice. Now, I know how we do. We're going to be fired up today and tomorrow, right? Oh, I get it, Pastor Greg. I'm the programmer. I'm going to write my code, right? But by Wednesday, you're back in the old program. Yes, yes. By Thursday or Friday, oh my goodness. Focus and practice. Vigilance is the word A Course in Miracles uses. And why wouldn't we be this serious about our lives? We get so serious about so many other things. We get serious about how bad life is and focused on it. And we'll argue folks down. No, you don't understand how bad it is. Even when someone sees the good in your life or can, well, wow, you know, but you're employed, or wow, you know, you have money coming from different places, you know, that I would be grateful for that. No, but you don't understand because what I used to have, right? We've become addicted to that level of speaking. Can you become addicted to this way of being, recognizing that you have absolute power? You have absolute power over your life. You create your own reality. You create your own life experience. And you wake up with that reality. And you can write down what you want your day to look like. You can just affirm good and only good for your day. And know that even when the unwanted thing shows up, that even that thing can and will be transformed into good. Right? We don't get hung up on what it looks like. We get hung up on what we know. Reverse the thought. Reverse the condition. And every condition is reversible. Somebody needs to hear that. Every condition is reversible. Now, we've experienced that in our lives in both ways, right? We've seen the good seem to go away, and we've seen the bad go away. Every condition is reversible. That's good news, because that means that this is happening according to definite principles, definite law. If we see the good go away, then we can reverse the thought to reverse that condition. Yes, yes. And when we see the bad or unwanted go away, we're clear that we reversed the thought, and that's why that thing we didn't want went away. Yes, yes. I invite everybody to stand. You are powerful creators. You have the power, possibility, and capability to change any condition in your life. If no one has ever told you that, let me be the one to tell you. You can think yourself thin. You can think yourself wealthy. You can think yourself healed. You can think yourself powerful. You can think yourself empowered. You can think yourself triumphant. You can think yourself victorious. You can think yourself on the top of a mountain in your life. You can think yourself overcoming whatever this challenge is that's in your life right now. Reverse the thought and reverse the condition. You have power. Pastor Yolanda and myself will not stand here and make agreements with victimhood, with lack, with limitation, or with smallness. We can't do it. But we will stand in absolute agreement that you are powerful beyond measure. We will stand in absolute agreement that you remain as God created you, perfect, whole, and complete. We stand in absolute agreement right here and right now that you are holy, that you are healed in body and mind. We stand in complete agreement with you right now that all of your relationships are healed, that your relationships are harmonious, that there's a unity in your life through all of your relationships. We stand here, right here and now with you, that you are successful in every endeavor, that every good idea that comes to you is a good idea that came from the mind of God, and it is supported. It has everything that it needs. The investment that is needed for that business to come forward, it is here now. We stand with you right here and right now. The people that are needed, the resources that are needed, we know that that big idea is a God idea. God ideas come supported with everything that is needed. Just as you came forth in this earth with everything that was needed for you to be a thriving human being on this planet, so it is true for the ideas that come forth through you. We stand in agreement with you right here and right now. Knowing your power. We stand in it right here and right now. Knowing that you are good and only good, we will not make an agreement with sin. You are sinless. We will not make an agreement with sin. You are sinless. You are not your mistakes. You are not your shortcomings. You are not the thing that you did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You are not that thing. We will not stand in agreement with anything other than your perfection, because that is how God sees you. That is who and what you are. We stand with you right here and right now. We stand in agreement with your fearlessness, because we recognize that you are an eternal being. You have lived so many lifetimes across many eternities, in other dimensions, in other planets, in other galaxies, in other ways of being, in other ways of seeing. You have thrived so many times in your life. We stand in the fearlessness of who and what you are. There is no reason and no thing to fear. We stand in the agreement and know that you are not your body. As A Course in Miracles said yesterday, your body is a wholly neutral thing. It serves a purpose, it serves a function, but it is not who you are. Speak to your body and remind it who you really are. Speak to your body and remind it who you really are. Speak to every cell of your being and remind it who you really are. In this moment, I feel the cells in our body coming back into alignment, coming into a greater recognition of our wholeness, coming into a greater recognition of our healing, coming into a greater recognition of our eternal nature. We were born and designed to thrive. Our bodies were not designed to hold stress. Our bodies were not designed to hold dis-ease. Our bodies were not designed to hold any of those things. And so if it's showing up so it can be healed. We let it be healed right here and right now. We let it be healed right here and right now. And finally, we stand in agreement with you that the past is over. It's complete. It's finished. It's gone. It does not matter what the story of your past may have been. It's over. And we stand in the completeness of that. Because if the past is over, every ending is a new beginning. And so we stand in the sweetness of that beginning. We stand in the light of that beginning. The new dawn of your life is shining. We stand in it right here and right now. That beginning. That beginning where all things are possible. That beginning that is just like the birth of a child, where there is only joy, where there is only excitement, where there is only possibility, where there is only smiles, where there is only congratulations. We stand in that now, in that new beginning. If the past is over, every ending is a new beginning. We stand in that now. And so I release this word back into the law. Back into this law that is always in operation, that is working on our behalf, even when we are not aware of it. And with gratitude and thanksgiving, I release this prayer. Together we say, amen, ashe. And so it is. And so it is.